Pokemon with Guns, or as some Neanderthals may call it, Palworld, is one of the weirdest games I may have ever seen. I mean, let's be honest, it's Pokemon with Arc and some other stuff. It's a completely unoriginal game and concept, but it sold 8 million copies in 6 days. It's popped off. Every day on the Steam chart, this game breaks its peak player record. Yesterday, it was like 2.03. Now it's at 2.1 million concurrent players. I haven't seen this game drop below a million ever since it came out. Seeing as how this game has sold over 8 million copies, I don't think I need to explain what the game is. But just in case, Palworld is essentially a mishmash of every survival game and some other games, but with Pokemon-like creatures that you can catch and forced to make AK-47s in a factory for you. And truly, I don't get the success of this game. I mean, this game has sold impossibly well, more than probably most AAA games that come out. I mean, obviously it's a little different, but Spider-Man 2 on the PS5 sold 5 million copies in 11 days. This got 8 in 6. Like, what the flip? This shit doesn't make any sense. I have a decent amount of time in the game, you know. It's pretty fun, it's decent, yeah. I don't disagree, I think it's fun. But how does this happen? So today, we're going to be talking a bit about the controversies of the game and how it's led to the popularity and try to get some understanding of how this game popped off. There's a lot to cover with this game, so I'm going to be a little quick here. So like I said, this game's pretty stinking big. It came out on Game Pass and still has sold 8 million copies. The only thing this game is behind is PUBG, which is at like 3 million something. And honestly, I could see it going above that. Unlike PUBG though, this game is surrounded in a multitude of controversies of it even existing, which I think is lending to its success. I mean, this game has got a lot of free press from people on Twitter and TikTok, not just from the normal people like streamers playing it, but from people complaining, saying it was made by AI. There's stolen meshes and assets, that it promotes animal cruelty. I mean, come on. I'm definitely a weenie and feel bad about killing animals in games, but this is just silly, alright? Because you enjoy Pokemon, Monster Hunters, or Palworld, that means you'll enjoy animal cruelty in real life? Looks like we got a stupid guy over here. If you believe that, you might as well believe that playing COD, or essentially most other games with murder in it, will make you want to murder people in real life. And unless you're Fox News, I don't think you believe that. Obviously, that isn't true. There is no correlation to that. Just like there's no correlation with stuff you watch in shows and movies to how you act in real life. That's just stupid. Sure, there's some basement-dwelling goblins, I'm sure, that it's true for, but for 99% of people, it isn't true. But then on top of that one, you also have controversies like there being stolen meshes and assets. And if we found out that that was true, I'm not going to say I would be surprised. Let's be honest. Even if you like this game a lot, this is probably one of the most egregious examples of an unoriginal game, maybe ever, that's at least popped off that I know of. Which is at least, I would argue, its biggest problem. That's not exclusive to Palworld though, so I can't even really get that mad at it. Because AAA games steal every other feature from each other all of the time. Battle Passes, Fortnite did it. Everybody else said, hell, we can't think of anything better because we have no creativity. Let's go with that. I think one of the best examples of everything wrong with the games industry right now is Call of Duty. At this point, Call of Duty's stealing from themselves. They're remastering old maps and selling them back to you for more than the original game was worth. Every new gaming trend that comes out, whether it fits in Call of Duty or not, they smack it into there. Palworld is not the only game that has a problem with unoriginality and copying. And there are similar meshes, but as a lot of people have brought up, how many different ways can you make a hedgehog look? And honestly, some of these examples people are putting out, they're just silly. Pen King looks nothing like the penguin from Pokemon. Alright? He doesn't. The hedgehog? It's a hedgehog. What do you want him to make it look different? What are you talking about? Most of the proof that there's been stolen meshes and stuff like that have came from random people on Twitter with no evidence, and the only evidence they had, they admitted they only said something or faked it because they didn't like animal abuse in games or something, which I already said is silly. There's no correlation there. Then you also have people thinking that this game was made by AI. And again, I'm going to be honest, was it made by AI? There's no real proof of that. Was AI probably involved in it, in the game making process, in making assets? I wouldn't be surprised. Again, there's no real proof of that other than saying that the CEO of Pocket Pair is a big AI glazer. They even made a game about AI art. So I feel like they'd be pretty open about it if this game was made by AI. Not to mention, in 2021, they have a gameplay trailer which looks much different. Bit of false advertising there, but it's not the first game to do that. You can see a lot of pals and stuff in the game that's still there right now, and that was prior to AI becoming as good as it is right now. So for the most part, you have pretty silly nothing controversies that people are just angry at because it looks similar to another game. And I don't necessarily blame them for getting upset and trying to fight for other artists and their intellectual property. But at the same time, we don't really need to defend Nintendo or Game Freak. You're not going to get a free lifetime subscription to Nintendo Plus or whatever the shitty ass Switch Online is just for defending them. They're big boys, they can handle themselves. And honestly, it's not a bad thing to have some competition in that field. Because Pokemon, even though it's not the only monster hunter or monster capturer game in existence, it is most certainly the biggest and the biggest game franchise on the planet, bigger than stuff like Minecraft and Call of Duty. So when you have stuff like this, it keeps it constantly in the news cycle, plastering it for everyone online to see. And seeing as how Pokemon is the biggest gaming franchise, you're serving this game up to people on a silver platter, giving it all the free publicity that it never would have had without it. With this game, you fall into kind of two different camps. Either you don't care about the controversies, or you're so incredibly angry about Palworld that the veins in your neck are about to explode. In some ways, I feel like the discussion around this is kind of similar to something like Hogwarts Legacy, where there were a bunch of people online, mostly Twitterites, the brain cancer of the internet, but still, they were saying, you hate these kind of people, or you're this kind of person, you're this sort of thing. When, just like I said in my Hogwarts Legacy video, I'll say it again here, it doesn't matter. What you buy is not a moral statement. It's not something saying, I support this, I support everything they do, or what they stand for. Alright? It's not. Unless it's directly tied to a political statement or ideology, it's not a political statement. Alright? And in the case of Palworld, it's not a statement on whether you support plagiarism or AI making video games. Because even if those two things were true, again, I still don't think it would mean, oh, I support them because I bought it. Most people just want to play a fun game. And when you constantly see this show up on your feed and you see people complaining about it for stupid reasons, it makes people want to play it more. Without all the controversy and drama and it constantly being in the news cycle, I don't think this game would be anywhere close to as big as it is right now. The most recent drama to come out about it is that Nintendo is now looking into Palworld and possibly going to sue them, which again, just keeps it in the news cycle, putting it on people's feeds to see. I don't think this is the only reason the game's popular, though. That other stuff plays a pretty decent role in it. I would say, though, there is another reason that I think could be associated to why this game popped off. Personally, I don't play Pokemon, but most, if not all of my friends do so I know the beef people have with Game Freak and Nintendo. All I have to do is look up on YouTube gameplay of the latest Pokemon game and see that it runs below 30 FPS and looks like shit, just to get an intro to why people don't like Game Freak anymore. I think this game is a response to gaming right now in general. Because although it sounds like Game Freak does suck, it's not exclusive to Game Freak. Most giant publishers are totally fine just letting their game franchise stagnate as long as it keeps making money, or just shipping broken products that either don't work, run terribly, or have no features at all while slapping a $70 price tag with pre-order bonuses, deluxe editions, microtransactions, trying to squeeze you dry of your doubloons. Not to bring up Call of Duty again in this video, but I think it's a good example of almost everything wrong with the games industry right now. And I can't speak very much on Pokemon because I don't play it. Call of Duty is a game that earns more money than it did last year almost every single year it's been released. But every year, it gets less and less content, it's buggier, or just plain broken, runs terribly, unbalanced. It's now $70, and it constantly shakes you down for microtransactions whenever it can. This isn't unique to Call of Duty. It's everywhere in the games industry. You can't go anywhere without them trying to shake you down for your lunch money or trying to sell you on some piece of shit, completely unready product. I think Palworld is a somewhat unconscious to possibly semi-conscious response to the current environment of the games industry. Most people play big AAA titles. That's just how it is, alright? They don't really play indie games. Indie games don't do this as much, but essentially all of the AAA titles do this. So I'm not particularly surprised when this kind of game pops off, when it releases, as far as I've played, relatively bug-free, at least not game-breaking bugs. It runs pretty decent on PC. It's casual and it's just fun to play. You can play it by yourself or with your friends. It has no microtransactions, at least right now, and it's like $30 at full price. It's essentially everything that's not AAA gaming. I mean, right before this, we had Lethal Company, a game made by a single furry that outsold Call of Duty on the PC. That just doesn't happen. But when you have people that are tired of being constantly told they need to spend more money and be their little pay piggies, games filled with anti-fun mechanics like SBMM, time gates, paywalls, and stuff like that, people are just, they're getting tired of it. And I don't blame them. Personally, in the past year or more, honestly, the most fun I've had with games are playing indie games. So I don't really find it a coincidence that two pretty simple, cheap indie games that you can play with your friends, that work, that run pretty good, and are just fun to play, they popped off. There's even some of this in the AAA gaming space. Things like Baldur's Gate, Alan Wake 2, Hogwarts Legacy. This is cheating a bit, but Cyberpunk with Phantom Liberty and 2.0, where, for the most part, these games come out, they're fun, they're casual, you can sit down when you're done from work, play it, and you have fun. You're not being punished for being good. You're not being punished because you didn't spend enough money. You're not being shaken down for your lunch money, your car keys, and your social security number. You can just hop on, have a fun time, maybe get invested into a story, maybe play with some friends. And that's what gaming should be. If you want to sweat and you want to make it your life's goal to be the best at the game or something, that's on you. That's your prerogative. There should be something for those people. But games should be fun, where you can just sit down, relax, maybe sweat a little bit if you want to, play with your friends, or don't play with your friends. Obviously, though, this idea has been lost on AAA gaming. So I think besides Palworld constantly being in the news cycle with these controversies and stuff like that, and constantly being talked about online, I think also a big part of it is this kind of yearning, not necessarily for the minds, but yearning for fun, content-filled games that run well, and you can kind of just chill out and play. All this to say that despite not being able to wrap my head around why this game popped off originally, I think now sitting down and talking about it for a few minutes here, I think it kind of shows exactly why Palworld popped off and why it only shows to be getting more popular. Despite some things with originality that I don't agree with in Palworld and think could lead the games industry down a harmful path, I think this is also a great response to Gremlins Online telling people that they are a certain way, or telling them about themselves just because they want to feel morally superior and say they have to care about every single problem in the world, or that everything you do is some kind of statement, and more so a response to the games industry itself. It's sending a signal that games are too expensive, at least in the way they are right now. I mean, again, just because it's the punching bag right now, and I know they're not similar games at all. Regardless, if I had to choose between Call of Duty and Palworld, I mean, it's not really a hard choice. Call of Duty, you got SBMM. The game doesn't even launch for me because it keeps deleting its own files. Game-breaking updates, $70 for remastered maps, constantly beating you over the head with a $40 battle pass saying you haven't spent enough money, and just generally unfun mechanics. Or I could choose a more casual experience like Palworld and just have some fun sitting, doing some goofy moments with my friends for $30. I'm going to choose Palworld. So at the end of the day, maybe Palworld's success is not as bizarre as I and maybe others originally thought.